Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our session. Welcome back. Thank you for rejoining us. We will be listening in this session to the story at Nordea, looking at the experience they've had in putting in place automation for QA. We're going to be hearing from Andy Armstrong and Fehmeed Ijaz, the leads on QA and testing at Nordea. But first, I'm delighted to introduce our session sponsor, Tricentis, and Jesper Turesson, the sales director for Tricentis for the Nordic region. So over to you, Jesper.
Thank you very much, Justin, and good morning, everyone. It's of course a pleasure to be here as a sponsor, but also to given the ability to present our next and more interesting speakers, Andy and Ijaz from Nordea. Well, I'll get back to that. I will take a couple of seconds to just reflect on where we stand in the market right now and what we see in the market. I mean, obviously, digital transformation has been a reality for many years nowadays. And what we see is that more software and more lines of code are used than ever before. We also see a trend shift where organization is moving their infrastructure in a modernization effort out to the cloud, which also amplifies the importance of having thorough and very efficient testing. On top of this, we also, to stay competitive, apply a lot of changes to our lines of code, which also needs to be tested. So testing is really one of the key challenges in large organizations today. Since we want to deploy the changes as quick as possible, many organizations have shifted towards agile, as well as striving for a DevOps-oriented way of deploying their application and changes. And what we see here is three parts. It's the continuous integration, it's the continuous deployment, but it's also the strive for continuous testing. So is continuous testing really a reality today? Well, the market research clearly indicates that we see an average of automation rates in the large enterprises, which spans between 15 and 20%. What does this mean in reality? Well, it means that 80 to 85% of the testing effort is still conducted manually. And if you want to deploy thoroughly and quickly, this becomes very evident that testing today is a showstopper and puts a lot of emphasis on the efforts to actually get the automation up to the rates that Gartner, Forrester, and IDC predicts is the right amount, which is close to 90% automation to keep up with the time. I've been fortunate enough to work with Nordea in their modernization efforts around testing QA for the last couple of years. And with that said, I'm so happy to be able to introduce Andy Armstrong, who's head of Group QA at Nordea, as well as Ijaz Fehmeed, who is head of QA efficiency at Nordea. Andy, please take it away.
Thank you, Jesper. I will share my screen. Okay, good morning. As Jesper said, thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Andy, and with my colleague Fehmeed, we're going to talk to you for a little while this morning about our experience of using Qtest to create a foundation for automation within QA across Nordea. Okay, so we're going to walk through, I'll briefly explain who we are and introduce myself. I'll talk about what our problem is and what our challenges were. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Fehmeed, who will talk through the interesting part around how we went about selecting a solution to meet those challenges, how we adopted and are now living with Qtest and laid the foundation for automation across our organization, across QA specifically in our organization. I think we've introduced ourselves, so I'm the group head of QA. Fehmeed heads our QA efficiency area and covers automation, and Jesper's just given us a great introduction. So before I start, just quickly, I'm sure everyone knows who Nordea is, but in case you don't, I just wanted to introduce our organization. We're a Nordic universal bank, and at Nordea we have a genuinely customer-centric approach to everything we do. So everything we do in every area of the bank is focused to create value for our customers. And by doing this is our method and the only way we can contribute to a greater good for our people, for our society, and therefore for our shareholders. We're relatively big. We're the leading bank in the Nordic countries, and one of the biggest banks in Europe with a very strong capital and liquidity base. We serve our customers through actually a presence in 20 countries, but focusing firmly on our 4 Nordic home markets of Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden. And we're also quite proud of what we've achieved and of what we do, and of being the best in our industry. These are a selection of awards that our marketing team like us to share, but yeah, we're pretty proud of ourselves sometimes. That said, I'm pretty sure you probably know who Nordea is. Most people in this audience do. So I'm going to get on and talk about how we're using a test management tool, which is the point of this presentation. So to explain the need for a test management solution, first I will try and touch upon the problem and the challenges we faced. So as I mentioned, we're a large bank with many, and within that we have many business areas. Traditionally, we've been organized around these business units, and technology has supported them in a pretty independent manner. However, last year, we did a reorganization, and we brought together the QA capabilities across the bank, and we created one QA team as part of what we call a cross-technology capability group. As part of this change, we became also the owners of the QA tooling from across the bank. And we set about looking at and identifying how we could best support our QA strategy from a tooling perspective. When we did this, we found out that we had over 40 different test tools in the bank, and I'm sure this story is familiar to many people. They covered test management, automation, data provisioning, environment management, test reporting, and many others. We also had multiple automation frameworks supported by a number of tools and using different coding languages, all in all creating a pretty extensive, pretty big overhead in terms of maintenance, and also in terms of inefficient delivery of automation across the bank. At the core of our QA strategy is a consistent and effective QA process. We call it NTS, Nordea Test Strategy. Genius. On the right-hand side of the slide here, you can see we have 5 test goals, 5 key goals, and it's built to meet these. And I'll come back to these at the end of this talk, and hopefully you'll see how what we've explained helps us to support those. Supporting those goals is our core QA strategy, which we base on 4 pillars. These are people, process, technology, and information. And what we realized is we had a need for a foundation on which we can base this strategy, on which we can base these pillars. We need automated delivery of testing and automated execution of our QA process, our traceability, our reporting and delivery of QA. On to the challenges. Some of the key challenges we were facing, as I said, our technology organization was pretty big. We've got some great people across all elements of our software delivery lifecycle. This brings with it communication challenges, specifically within our business development and our QA teams. We were missing consistency in our reporting, our ability to provide traceability across these areas, and to constantly govern everything that we put into production. We were lacking a consistent and efficient test case management solution. Too often we created things once, twice, 3 times. Integration testing, as an example, we were doing multiple times in multiple areas. There was a lot of overlap. And then we had a number of technical challenges, integrations to open source tool sets, and kind of aligning with our journey in the bank around the CI/CD and DevOps and getting QA into those pipelines. And finally, and last but not least, we also needed a test case management tool that we could use to support the bank's agile transformation without losing the value that we had and we still have that's contained in what are now our legacy assets. Okay, so hopefully that briefly has explained the problem and the challenges. And now what I'll do is hand over to Fehmeed, who will explain what we've done to address those challenges. Fehmeed.
Thank you very much, Andy, and good morning, everyone. My name is Fehmeed Ijaz, and I will, over the next few minutes, walk you through the process that we ran to select the new test management tool at the bank. And then once the decision was made, then how we roll it out to all the IT initiatives, and then I will then walk through different use cases, how we are using Qtest today in different QA processes. So coming back to the challenges and the pain points that Andy just mentioned, and now I'm talking about Q4 2019, right? And at the time, the QA community, although we were part of the different, we were split across different areas of the bank and working with the different test management tools back then, but we all share these challenges, the pain points, and then sort of made a community, right, through which we started talking to each other, and then reached to a point where we saw a need that now we should start looking for a new tool, right? So though as part of Nordea test process, we had guidelines around how to do testing in general. We had some plans, ambitions for automation, and there was a need to do the central reporting, but we were missing a test management tool that could glue all these pieces together and lay the foundation for the implementation parts of this journey. And before we started the assessment process itself, we spent some effort to do the preparation, right? And there the first step was to understand what key capabilities we were looking after in the new test management tool. And then since we were expected to assess different tools in the market, so we wanted to assure that we are doing those assessments in an aligned way, right? And then how we would know that we have been successful with our efforts. So this is where the success criteria or the key set of requirements come into the picture, that the core capabilities that we were looking after in the new test management tool, and in how we are going to run the assessments. And together with that, an important part of preparation was to create a dedicated team around the assessments, right? So since we were planning to go through different tools, so from prioritization point of view, we wanted people allocated to this work, and of course a project plan that how we are going to run these assessments. And when picking up the different teams, we also wanted to ensure that we had representation from different parts of the bank. So because in each area, in each part, the teams were using almost a different tool with heavy set of their local customization. So the set of challenges and the problems that each area was facing were quite unique to them. So this is where we saw opportunity to bring all these people with different experiences and learnings together on the same forum, so where they could collaborate and contribute towards the selection process. And when we were ready, we started with the execution. So we adopted an iterative approach, right? So we started with assessment of one tool, and then out of success criteria, some of the elements were critical. So we were in the beginning going through those important aspects of success criteria. And if we saw that the tool that we were assessing, it lacked some of the core capabilities that we were after, then we would stop there, right? And then start with the new assessment. So upon conclusion of one assessment, we took back learnings, how we could improve, maybe adjustment of success criteria, how we could be efficient in the future iterations, and then proceeded with the next one. So this entire process we ran for approximately 7 months, during which we assessed 4 tools in the market, and 8 teams participated in these assessments, right? And each team representing different parts of the organization, and up to 70 people contributed with these assessments. And when we were assessing the 4th tool, the Qtest, and we could see that it was fulfilling almost all the success criteria. Then we stopped there and give recommendation to the QA governance forum, where an official decision was taken that now we would move ahead with QTest as the standard test management tool for the bank. And on the next slide, here it's how we measured different assessments. So here's an overview of a few critical elements from success criteria. And these criteria come from, of course, the pain points and the challenges that we are having, right? So in order to implement the Nordea test process and have traceability of testing back towards the requirements, we were looking for a tool that could help us to implement that. And then not just automation of testing, but we also had some plans around automating different activities in as part of QA, right? So we're looking for a tool that could also enable us to implement such an automation. And some of the existing tools that we had, though they were good fit for small to medium sized teams, but when we wanted to implement them to big programs or big projects, then those implementations didn't go as planned, right? So they were lacking the scalability aspect. And then we had the need to do the common reporting, but those tools, and due to a lot of customizations and each area picking up their own set of fields and values, we were not aligned across the usage of tool. And then it was nearly impossible to produce the metrics that we were after, right, through the data that we are capturing those tools. Some of the tools were lacking reusability aspect by the design, and some tools that we're using were not good fit for agile ways of working. So this is just some of the critical aspects and features that when we were doing the assessment, then we were looking for these capabilities, right? Next slide, please. So now, once the decision around QTest was made, so how we rolled it across to different parts of the organization, right? And on the next screen are the key milestones with the QTest selection and adoption. So in Q1 2020, the decision around QTest being the new test management tool was taken. And the next quarter, we spent to set up the test and production instances. So test instance for QTest was primarily for training purposes, and production instance was supposed to be used for doing test management in IT initiatives. And at the same time, then we started QTest channeling through different internal approval processes. So QTest is recognized as the new standard for test management, and we could start rolling it across. And then significant effort we invested to define the common QTest template. One of the pain points we had from our existing tools was the maintenance, right? The effort that we had to spend due to heavy customizations that each team has done in terms of the fields and values that they introduced to the tools. So from day one in QTest, we wanted to ensure that every new project that we onboard is using the common template, right? So in the long term, we could reduce the maintenance effort. And secondly, we also wanted to ensure that through the common template, we are capturing data that's essential to prepare the metrics that we were interested in from QA point of view, right? So the common QTest template is helping us to implement these two goals. And then we defined with the user roles and the trainings that were dedicated to them. And then also at end of Q2, when all these enablers were in place, we executed some pilot migrations. And then from Q3 onwards, we opened QTest to new projects. So projects that had no needs for migration of data from existing tools, we started onboarding them. And later on, during the quarter, we started a stepwise migration approach from our existing test management tools to QTest. These migrations are still ongoing, and we are planning to conclude them by the end of Q4 this year. And as we are out of some of the legacy tools, so now we could start the decommissioning phase for them and from July onwards, we have such plans to decommission the first tool in the chain we have. So I have now touched upon the selection process and how we rolled out Qtest to different parts of the organization. And now I will walk you through different use cases, how we are using Qtest in the QA area, right? And in this case, I will go through three areas. So first one is in context of SDLC. The diagram here shows the Nordea common SDLC model. Towards the left are listed different capabilities that are normally contributing towards the development and maintenance of software. It includes requirements management, release management, deployment management, QA, development capability, release orchestration, for example. Different boxes on this diagram show steps in the CI/CD pipeline, right? And arrows show the dependencies between different steps. The Q steps in the SDLC model are highlighted in the green color. And these steps include test planning, test design, test reporting, test control, test data management, test environments management, right? The automation of these QA steps has been key focus area from the QA side. And we have, and the Qtest lies at the core of this automation effort, right? So far, we have managed to implement automation of test planning and test reporting steps. So with a matter of a few button clicks, both the release test plan and release test report can be generated in an automated way. Also, when we are implementing testing as part of continuous integration pipelines, then implementing different quality gates as part of the delivery process. So in case the quality criteria isn't met at a given point, we could break the pipeline and then fix the problem underlying root cause. So the implementation of these quality gates is also centralized around Qtest and the data that we retrieve from there, right? So in context of SDLC, in short, we are leveraging Qtest to implement automation of different QA activities. The second use case is around the translating the Nordea test process in test management area, right? So, and this is where combined Jira and Qtest, we have managed to translate the process into the tooling tooling space, where Jira is used for requirements and backlog management and defect management, while Qtest is used for test management, right? So, and when we start with the test planning, then we are bringing in fixed version information from Jira. And then together with that, we import the requirements and start with the test analysis and test design phase. So as soon as we link test cases to requirements, then we could establish the traceability for those requirements and start doing the measurement of quality. And then in Qtest itself, when we are planning for doing functional and non-functional testing and plan it across different test cycles and test levels, and record the execution results in Qtest. So based on that information, then we could do the monitoring of testing, how we are progressing, and also reporting, right? Extracting key KPIs and metrics out of Qtest, but also create the final deliverables or release test report, for example, that now we are done with the testing, and this is the picture of the quality. And the third use case that I will touch upon is around test automation. So we see test management toolset as one of the layers in a test automation solution. And we keep test cases and test scripts independent of the test management tool, following guidelines from ISTQB, generic test automation architecture. And the idea here is to have interface to a test management tool allows us to then do test planning for both manual and automated tests in the same tool set, right? And also when we are running the automated test, we are reporting results for those tests back to Qtest. So then we could use the common data source to do the reporting for the entire quality, entire release. And then that data comprises of both manual test cases and for automated tests as well. And then we are also using different channels to kick off the execution of automated tests. So it could either be through a continuous integration pipeline where projects or initiatives are quite advanced and doing continuous testing, for example, or where projects have a need to kick off execution from the test management tool itself. So here Qtest comes into the picture, or in some cases, depending on the needs, maybe some people like to have done execution locally on their systems. So to support these different use cases, then our generic test automation frameworks have interface to Qtest. So from there we could do the test planning and then do the reporting for both manual and automated tests. With that, I will hand back the presentation back to Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Fehmeed. Thank you. So that's fantastic. Fehmeed's covered, how we've gone about setting our foundation and putting our foundation into place. And just to finish the presentation now, what I'll talk about is actually, what that means to us and what comes next. So we need to complete our rollout. Our foundation will truly then be in place. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, we want to use this foundation to use automation to drive our NTS goals. Those 5 goals are around ensuring that our deliveries meet the expectations of our customers. We mentioned our customers are at the center of everything we do, and that's true for QA as much as the rest of the business. We want to make sure we can get deliveries into production much more quickly, and we can support that whilst maintaining the level of quality. Fehmeed mentioned using a common data source. We need to do this so that we can make our decisions based on facts, that our test reporting is the gold source of information that people can base those decisions upon. Of course, this increases our operational stability, but that is one of our core test strategy goals. And finally, maybe the least exciting is compliance to our internal and external requirements. So, we have internal compliance requirements, and of course, we have regulators in our industry that we have to live up to. So that's where we're at. That's where we're going. We really see this as a foundation for us, that we're going to drive our 2025 roadmap. We're looking at the next 3 to 4 years. And it's interesting at the beginning that Justin, you talked about continuous testing. We see that very much on our roadmap, and it's something we're heading towards. So yeah, this is the starting point of the journey toward that. And with that, thank you for listening, guys. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free.
Thank you. Yes, I have a couple of questions from the audience. One is a very specific question. I don't know if you, as part of your evaluations, looked at X-ray. I've had a question. My development team keeps telling me to look at X-ray. What does Qtest offer that X-ray doesn't? If you haven't looked at X-ray, that might be hard. So
X-ray is certainly one of the tools. I think I mentioned we had 40 tools in our estate. X-ray is one of them. In terms of I guess that question is looking for a fairly technical answer. So I'll probably ask Fehmeed to jump in here and help me with the detail of our evaluation.
Thank you, Andy. And as Andy mentioned, that we are already using X-ray, right? It is one of the 4 existing test management tools. And some of the elements that I mentioned on the slide around success criteria and the pain points that you touched upon. So that's where we saw that X-ray was sort of not a good fit, right? For almost in some of the areas, and it was lacking behind, and that was reason not just for X-ray but for other tools that we are using today that we saw a need that we should start looking for a new tool, right?
Thank you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, because I did have another question about business outcomes, but I'm going to perhaps save that for our next conversation. I want to thank Andy. I want to thank you, Fehmeed, and I want to thank Jesper very much